Yeah, I had Coach Deal on a few weeks ago, and he is the most simplistic weight loss coach I've ever seen. And I like whenever I invited you on, it was kind of that thing in my head where I was almost comparing what you do because you're both different ends of the spectrum. But I think the reason why, especially on X, the two of you have got like quite like a cult audience, and you are clearly doing pretty well in your spaces, but is because I don't think people want this scientific back nutrition advice anymore. I think it's really outdated, and like I've looked like in like the archive of fitness videos, the people that were huge at times, and looking at like kind of their diets and their nutritional advice, it's so miserable. Like no sauce, like, don't cook your food in anything. Has to be bone dry. I think that is probably what the rise in fitness is becoming, is because you don't need to really, like, you need to make sacrifices, I understand, but it doesn't need to be that deep.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. And I think that a lot of that has come from bodybuilding. And this isn't, hating on bodybuilding, but I think that the way you need to look at it is that bodybuilders train for one thing, and that is to be as big as possible and as lean as possible. They don't care about, it doesn't matter about how you feel. It doesn't matter, how. I don't know if you know Dean Training. He's really good, but he posted something, and this guy was saying, "Oh, you can't do 10 pull-ups," and he doesn't train to. He trains to look as good as possible and be as lean as possible. It doesn't matter. But I think for me, my angle isn't going towards that. It's no hate to bodybuilding, but it's just not what I do. I'd rather look slightly less good, but feel great and kind of enjoy myself a bit more. And I think if I ever wanted to kind of get into that, then I could learn it. But I think, some people also are interested in the science and some people aren't. And I am, I'm a bit of a nerd. I love my Huberman Lab podcasts and stuff, but um, some people, they don't care. They just want to know exactly what you need to do and why you need to do it, and that's enough. And I totally agree with you, man. I think a lot of the time people don't have the time to kind of delve into it because they've got to do it anyway. Do they need to waste their time learning? Probably not. I like it because I'm a bit of a nerd in that sense.
I suppose the demographic you're kind of aiming for is, the people around the married lifestyle, and they probably don't have the time to commit to such a drastic lifestyle change. They probably would want a diet that they can still fit in normal foods, and they don't really need to be sitting down looking at a bowl of chicken and rice thinking like, am I ever going to get to the bottom of this? Like, they probably do want a more simplistic view of it because their life's probably, I've probably got a lot of complications in it already.
Mm. Yeah, I totally agree, Matt. I totally agree. And you've made me think back to when I dirty bulked, and I mean, you posted the picture
Oh,
when
don't.
you posted a picture of me when I was dirty bulked, um, when you were kind of advertising for this space, and I remember sitting there with a bowl of ground beef, full fat ground beef. And I ate the whole thing, and I remember that was the last time I was sitting there. It took me about 30 minutes to eat this, and I thought to myself, I never want to feel like this again. I never want to sit here and eat food and shovel it into my mouth and just hate what I'm eating. I felt so depressed in that moment, even though I dirty bulked on clean food. I got chubby on clean food, and I was sat there and I thought, I'm miserable. I'm tired walking upstairs. Like, yes, I'm strong. Yes, I'm big, but I hate what I eat. I feel like crap. And I think from that point, I thought, well, I've done this eating clean. So, imagine it's clearly I was eating too much, or clearly I was eating the wrong stuff. And yeah, I mean, some people it's worth it because they get huge and then they get shredded and they look amazing. But for me, it just wasn't worth that. At that point, I thought I'm never going to do this again. I'm never going to get chubby, and I'm never going to sit here eating food for half an hour when it tastes like cardboard.
That's actually a topic that I had wrote down for the last few people that are involved in fitness that I've spoke to. But I've never really gone on the topic. It's a weird one to talk about, is bulking. from especially for men and women. I think people forget that women do need a bulk too, but it's such a fine line because, as you said, dirty bulking, but you're eating clean food, but you're just going so far off the wrong end. It's a topic that is so difficult to talk about because there's so many specifics but myths at the same time involved in it, and a lot of people that maybe not people who are a little bit older, they probably don't need to bulk as much, but people around that age of 18 to 24 could do with a bulk, but it's just they think bulk is let me eat as much food as possible for a year and see what happens, when in reality that is probably the worst thing you could do health and fitness wise.
Mm, yeah, I totally agree. And I think if you're in that 18 to 24 demographic, I think the best thing that you can do is if you want to bulk and you want to eat a ton of food, I would say, lift weights as you usually would trying to bulk. Do a bunch of like high intensity cardio. So if you think of, 18 to 24, let's say you're at university, in that situation, you could eat a ton of food. You can make sure you're sleeping okay. Yes, you might go out drinking and stuff, but join a sports team because that way you're training once or twice a week, doing some kind of hit cardio. And then, you might be playing rugby, football. You'd have a match at the weekend, burn a ton of calories, and then you'd head for a night out. And yes, it might not be the healthiest way to go, but at least you're enjoying yourself. And because of the high intensity cardio, you're just so much more unlikely to put on as much fat. That might be bro science, it might be completely summed up in science, but I've noticed personally every time I've put on too much fat, I've eaten clean and been sedentary and not moved around very much. And every time I've been leaner, I have done a lot of hit cardio and I've also eaten kind of the way I want to eat.
Your food posts on this platform have become my guilty pleasure because it's almost like I want to eat the corner of my screen when they come up on my For You page. But the thing, like, you put out posts about food that are, they like kind of make me stop and look at them for a minute because you make healthier versions of people's favorite foods, and you almost can't tell the difference. Do you think making that adjustment to making your own versions of those foods you're craving helps with staying on track and not needing cheat meals or crashing?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that it ends up being like it's a bit of a secret weapon for me because you know there's you've got the whole based completely clean, no plastics group, and I love a lot of them, but I think that the degree of that isn't realistic for a lot of people just yet. But then you've got a bunch of other people who don't care at all, and they end up on the complete opposite end, and they think, well, life's short, I don't care, what's the point? And I think that the truth and the reality, not the truth, but the truth and the reality kind of comes in the middle. And it actually started when we were looking at um, meals and we started using HelloFresh, and the food quality is really good. And we love the ideas. They got super creative. One of them was a naan pizza, so it's pizza on a naan bread. Another one was they started doing homemade burgers. So I thought to myself, well, these taste really good. How can I make these wedges basically into chips? How can I make them taste better than the HelloFresh that we're eating? And what are they doing with their burgers? So the meat was just, fairly standard meat. But if you put that in with a bunch of seasonings and kind of up the fat intake as well, put some butter and olive oil, it starts tasting incredible. And olive oil tastes basically the same as the crap seed oils that they put in they put in junk food, but it's it's good for you. Everyone knows that olive oil is good for you and seed oils aren't. So I think just making those adjustments when you know you can is, I think that it comes down to the fact that some people are just lazy. Like, I'd rather someone spent 10 minutes figuring out healthy foods that they like and they could eat for the rest of their life than spending 5 minutes ordering food and the other five moaning about why they're out of shape. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And I think the way it is at the moment, bro, is that you're gonna eat food at the end of the day. Do you want to eat good food that you like for the next 50, 70, or 90 years of your life? Or, and actually have a good quality of life? Or do you want to eat, kind of now food that tastes really good but makes you feel like crap the next day and live a terrible quality of life for the next 40, 50 years? It kind of comes down to that. And, if I'm tired, I'll eat more food. And if it's high quality, it's less likely that I'll put it on as fat, more likely that that it will go towards some positive bodily function. There's a lot more science behind it, but at the end of the day, I speak from experience, and most people who are in shape would agree. Most people who are out of shape would disagree. So, you know, everyone else can make the decision on that.
We both are based in the UK, and we probably both know many people that fall in and out of shape constantly. They go months where they're in incredible shape, they're doing everything right, and then there's just months where they just completely fall off. Do you think that strictness, that kind of setting unrealistic boundaries, do you think that kind of almost drives them insane to the point where they have to give up?
Um, that's a really interesting question. Um, yeah, that is a really good question. I think that a lot of it comes down to the information that people hear. So if you're hearing, in the UK, we've got, um, you could say a really good, really bad health service kind of rolled into one, where the concept of it is amazing, but in practicality, it doesn't work out um, for certain reasons. I'm not going to get political, but information is put out. And if you go to the NHS website, for anyone listening, that's the British Health Service, it will tell you things like don't eat too many eggs, don't eat too much red meat, don't get too much sunlight. But we know for a fact, scientifically, that these are all things that prolong your life. And if they don't prolong your life, they make your life better for the years that you are alive. So, but you've got the governing body telling you something that is very bluntly false. And a lot of people believe that. I mean, as a kid, if you're told something by your parents who are told something by their parents, you're going to believe that. And that's kind of, what I was brought up with. And my parents are only finding out now in their 50s that things like high fat foods are actually good for you, and the low fat crap is, is bad for you. And they're finding out in their 50s. And you think they've been told a lie, because it is a lie, all of these years. And it's ended up with, I don't know, just fatigue, illness. I mean, think of the amount of times that someone might have got the flu or a cold and they've taken time off of work. And it's just because their immune system was compromised because they're feeding themselves rubbish. So um, I think a lot of it comes down to pretty poor information. And, you know, there's a lot more outspoken people on this subject than me. But at the end of the day, I think people are starting to realize that the information on food is just completely wrong.